Hello, this is Farrell Benson with Nation 473, and I wanted to do another video on attack values as I thought at some point that I was getting close to figuring out and unraveling the onion that is the attack value and how much damage you're actually getting per point of attack value. And that was done over a series of tests with Doom Iron. I don't want to expand this video too much other than to say that my thought process on the test kind of failed. My thought on how the scaling was going, because it's definitely not a one-to-one ratio, or at least it didn't appear that way in its initial data set, seemed like it was really low, 1-2%, something like that. And so I kind of played with a few things, and I decided that the best way to test this was to do Doom Iron, and well, you'll see that we have some different varying totals. The way I decided to do this was with a single troop, one T10 sniper. And I picked the one T10 sniper because it has controllable values. It's 208 attack base, right? It's going to get 2 hits off, so that means it's 416 base damage. And then from there, I can then try to get that percentage that I'm expecting to see, because I was more or less expecting it to be like a 1-to-1 ratio through the hundreds, probably a 50% ratio from 100 to 200, from 200 to 300. We're looking at 33%, right, and so on. And that made sense because it was convenient. So I'd convinced myself that that's what that was. But as you guys can see, the numbers aren't exactly here. So let's explain how we got to these really low numbers. And I'm actually going to do this a bit different. We're going to talk Excel. And I know everyone's really excited to see an Excel spreadsheet, but I really wanted to play around with this. So, all right, what do we got? We have our base damage, right? And you can see here it's 208 times 2 because we get 2 hits off per fight. The first line is the control line, so this is like the total value. I unequipped any officer that could have any kind of effect on my end number. Maria, for instance, is one of those officers. I unequipped Maria. Since I'm sending one unit, there's no Titans. I unequipped Doc Gray. I unequipped Imedisi. I unequipped Tifa. Zeus does not have a skill unlocked, so I saw no point in doing that. And I did 2 attacks at the base value because I wanted to make sure that reducing my damage to troops, that percentage, that increases damage to troops, that had 0 effect on them, because if he's coded as melee, that could theoretically do that. So that was a 60% reduction, or sorry, not 60, a 16% reduction in damage, and you can see that it didn't change. So clearly those didn't affect anything. What do we have here? We have at 565 damage, my ideal sort of number, if it were a evergreen scaling, is here. As you can see, it's just the damage times the percentage. Now, you could say that this number is actually a little bit off, and we'll talk about it later, because I realize that as a percentage, I should put a decimal point further over, because 500% would be 5 times damage, or it doesn't really matter. It's not going to play into effect on this number, because even if I put a decimal point over here and do this on all of these values, it's actually not going to change too much of the end numbers, because it's way off. It's so far off that I don't even think changing these to what they would be as full point values for actual percentage multiplications is really going to affect all that much. So these didn't change at all. This did, right? The damage, and this makes more sense to me, right? 2,000 something damage. That sounds about right. And honestly, same thing kind of here. right? There should be some decimal points moved over a couple places, but even with that, we're 76 and I'm expecting 2000. Or in this instance, 76, and if we move the decimal place over 2 more points, I'm expecting 1,337 elite damage, right? And that's for anyone who's that old who understands my 1337 elite reference. Congratulations. But even with that, I'm too far off to even want to tell you that we're in the ballpark. Right? It's not happening. This is kind of what I thought it was going to be. Again, from 1 to 100, we have 100% damage. And you can see me playing with it. I added an extra 100 into all of these. So this is where you're probably going to see that reduction to a more normalized number. But long story short, even with that, it didn't, like, it's 76 damage, right? So clearly Doom Iron has stats. Okay, that should be obvious to everyone. Didn't even occur to me. I was just thinking I'm hitting a dummy. It has stats. Okay, so now we know this. So this is where all of these percentage variances come out. I want to look at, okay, well, but what percentage is it from here to here? Like, how much did I lose by losing this much? So, here you can see that I have reduced, 82%. Right? So I've reduced 82% here. And it's across the board, right? 100% here, 150% there, right? Like, we're reducing very, 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 very far. Because these numbers, for the full percentage of attack, you're looking at 569%, right? We're looking at 483%, and so on and so forth. So these should correspond with these. Clearly they don't. And okay, you could argue for some rounding issues, right? Because 85% here, 90% there, right? These are all for the ideals, right? Even when I'm multiplying across, like, this should work because this doesn't bother with Doom Iron, right? We'll talk about that later, right? But here's what we're expecting for values, right? We're expecting these totals. And in my ideal scenario where I'm correct and my assumptions were accurate, here's what we would get. And again, those are not the case. So everything from here to here is red. None of this is accurate. None of this should even be bothered with. It doesn't help us anymore. What do I know? So from the actual outcome, one sniper, we reduced by 82% here, and that 82% reduction net us 61 damage, or 80% variance between the first and the second. 95% here, and we reduced by 52%. So, okay, that's not even that far, right? But we see here, oh, not 52%, my bad. We reduced what? 20%, and we have a 10% reduction. So we're not getting exact numbers. And that's really what it boils down to, is it's like, here we have, that's why I see 5. Sorry, this number is throwing me off. -C4, yeah. Because this is from the control, this is from the one above it. Okay, that's why. Anyways, long story short, we should be seeing something closer to this percentage here, and we are pretty consistently off, with exception to the second line, and that one seems to be the most accurate across the board. everything else is 5% or more further off the number than we were expecting. So I can tell you that we're not closer to finding out how much value you're actually getting out of attack. I would love to be able to say, hey, you're getting 20% more when you get this XYZ percentage. That number feels correct. But there's a lot going on behind the hood where those multiplications are coming in that isn't panning out. And I got rid of all of the other variables this time around to make sure that it was as easy as possible, right? One unit, set numbers, and I got rid of all of the other shenanigans trying to get to the closest value possible. So, stack attack. This is really the takeaways, right? Stack your attack. It doesn't seem like, it's erratic on how effective it is, but it clearly does more the higher up you get, right? Because we're still getting a 20% increase from, 80% attack. That's not terrible, actually. We're getting, from 150, like that extra 50%, we're getting 30% value here. So, you're getting an erratic amount, and it does seem like, at the very least, the one thing I can say is the lower the number is, the more value you are getting. It goes up as you increase percentage, and the amount of benefit you get does go down. That is to be expected with the power scaling, but it's not going down at a rate that is so drastic as I was thinking it would be, that, the difference between 1,000 LRA and 1,600 is about 15% damage. That's what originally I thought was happening, and it is not. So, I just hoped to clear up a few things. Again, I consider this experiment maybe a little bit of a failure. Not because it was a bad experiment, but because it just didn't net the results I was expecting, and I can't explain the results other than, the one thing that is consistent is the more attack you have, the more damage you're dealing, and it does seem to curve off, but the curve isn't sharp. It's more of a gradual curve. So we will continue to keep an eye on this, and I just wanted to, hopefully clear a few things out. So if anyone has anything that they can think of that maybe I missed, please leave those down in the comments. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. And I appreciate your guys' time. Have a good rest of your day.